Hello, it's Wednesday and it's time for Pop and Politics. We are talking about the latest in hot topics, news, and entertainment. I'm KJ, and let me introduce you to my co host. We have Kelly E., Yana, and joining us tonight, we also have Melik Abdul. Malik is a political analyst and Republican strategist. How's everyone doing tonight?
Hi, hello,
Hi,
hello.
doing well.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Excited to talk to you and talk to everyone tonight. So before we get into it, I always say join the conversation by leaving a comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. We will check the comments periodically throughout the show. And don't just comment, subscribe. Subscribe to our social media so you always know when we post new content. Also, check us out on our website at www.metroconservativemedia.com for up-to-date information. We are a necessary voice in news and entertainment. All right. Also, we are also going to show Malik. Malik has a website as well. That is malikabdul.com. Is that right, Malik?
It is, it is. I'm hoping it's up. I was making some changes to it, so
Okay.
I'm hoping it's live, it's active.
Okay. All right. Well, if it's not, definitely check it out. I've been on there multiple times. It's a great site. Loads of information. So definitely check it out. All right. So we are going to get right into it. Everybody, let's set it off. We're going to go right into the news that has been everywhere, social media, mainstream news. We're talking about the FBI raid of Mar-A-Lago. So again, according to the New York Times, former President Donald Trump said on Monday that the FBI had searched his Palm Beach, Florida home, had broken open a safe and an account signaling a major escalation of the various investigations into the final stages of his presidency. So I'm going to open it up to you. I'll go right to you first, Shelley. Has the FBI gone too far?
Hotel Yankee. I think so.
All right. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this, Yana? Has the FBI gone too far?
Well, yeah, this is something I would see in a totalitarian state. And they're obviously still afraid of Trump in order to do that. So this is something that we see in countries where there's a constant political strife where they literally want to remove someone so that person does not become a threat to a ruling party anymore.
Okay. What are your thoughts on this, Malik?
Well,
Mhm.
yeah, so I actually think that I can't say that they've gone too far. Of course, my initial thoughts was that this was political, but I think the problem for the FBI in the Biden White House at this point is that we don't know any information on the raid. So we haven't heard anything from Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. The White House itself refuses to address it. We haven't heard anything from Joe Biden. And until that happens, until we know the information that's actually in the warrant, on what grounds was the warrant actually granted, the only thing that we're left to do is speculate, which is why many of us, definitely conservatives, and in fact, some on the left are saying that this smells a little fishy. You even had Andrew Cuomo, who came out and said that the Biden, they're going to have to say something. They're going to have to clear the air. And I'm hoping, tomorrow is Thursday, and then we have Friday. Joe Biden has already gone on vacation. So if they don't address this before the weekend, I think by Monday come, who knows, all hell will probably break loose. But I know that the Republicans have been pressuring the FBI to actually give them that information on what it was, on what grounds was the warrant given. But it's looking pretty sketchy right now because we're talking about something that is literally unprecedented. And we're discussing a president of the United States, so we're going to have more. And at this point, they're not being transparent.
Yeah, according to the New York Times, the items in the boxes seized by the FBI included documents, mementos, gifts, letters, The archives do not describe the classified material it found other than to say it was classified national security information. So the question of how Trump handled sensitive material and documents is complicated because he, as president, can declassify this information. So it's very bizarre. We don't know why. And these are a lot of questions that need to be answered.
And when you talk about, sorry, go ahead, Shelley.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, to Malik's point, true, we don't know what was in the warrant. We don't know the basis of it. And things do look sketchy right now. I say Hotel Yankee because even if we don't know those details yet, I don't think we can ever rule out politics when politicians are involved. Okay, I don't think we can ever rule that out. Not to mention that this 90-day period or so before the next election, if I recall back in 2016, or I think it was 2016 or 2015, when President at the time, candidate Trump was, Hillary Clinton, when James Comey came out and, basically eradicated any kind of charges that would have been given to her based on some emails and some bleach. Okay, so we can never rule out politics, even if we do know what's in the warrant, because politicians are involved.
Right, yeah, and that's actually a very good point. And to piggyback off of what you said, Shelley, I think what people need to know, because obviously things get muddled, where one side says this, one side says that. But I think it's important for people to know that Hillary Clinton had classified documents on a private server in a basement of a home, I believe, in Colorado. So we do know that the FBI, they did not raid Hillary Clinton's Chappaqua home in New York. So this is really unprecedented. I've heard people say, well, it's not, they made the Hunter Biden comparison. True. Hunter Biden is not a politician, but Hillary Clinton was not just the first lady. She was the Secretary of State. And she had classified documents that she destroyed, and the FBI did not raid her home.
Right. And I was going to, actually, Clinton came to my mind as well when we were talking about this, that she wasn't raided. And that makes me think that the Democrat Party are the ruling party then. They're the ones that are trying to keep power however way they can, whether they are doing it legally or illegally, I think at this point. And it makes me think of other countries where things like that happen. So maybe right now I focus, when I look at the news, I focus a lot on Eastern Europe. And I don't know if everybody knows here that back in 2014 in Ukraine, it was Victoria Nuland and other people. Obama's administration was very much supportive of the coup that happened in Ukraine. And the elected president at the time, his home was raided and he had to flee the country because it was dangerous. His life was in danger. So he fled the country. His home was taken over. His possessions were taken over. And something like that happens in countries like that with, help of other sponsors. So when I look at what's going on here, it really makes me think of, someone being in charge and someone sending these kind of raids in order to prevent the person from maybe running for president again.
I want to take you guys to take a look at this clip. This is Tim Scott on a news channel. I believe it was either today or yesterday, and he's responding to the FBI raid. This is clip number 4.
Well, we've had the FBI before the Judiciary Committee just in the last 2 weeks trying to figure out why they do what they do. And there's been lots of questions before this raid about whether or not the FBI is doing their job apolitical. And we don't know the answer to that question yet. This is probably doubts
about the FBI.
This is going to raise more questions, in my opinion. We need to let this play out and see exactly what happens. But we should all have been stunned and surprised and shocked at what happened yesterday. The real question is, A, what is the Federal Records Act? And B, what are we talking about? It has to be something of incredible magnitude for at least my side of the aisle to say that was warranted. Without that, I think we're going to find ourselves in a very big mess as it relates to the credibility of the FBI.
Well, so you don't have any concern that they're going to find anything at the Mar-A-Lago?
Well, I think we should really, as opposed to rushing to judgment, the most important thing that we can do is let it play out. Because I have no idea what they were looking for, and I don't think anybody knows what they were
On that
looking
point,
for.
I think it's interesting that as you sit before us today, you are not saying that former President Trump is the best representative of the Republican Party, and you're also not saying, "Don't worry, America, you can trust the FBI."
Well, I think that I am saying that I love my new book, and I'm conversation.
All right. So that was Tim Scott. Now, he took a lot of flack from Republicans behind his response on that interview. You guys know, full disclosure, I love Tim Scott. He's actually one of the ones that is in the running for president in 2024. He hasn't declared, of course, but there are whispers that he may throw his hat in the ring. What do you guys think of his reaction there?
Yeah. Look, I think his reaction was very measured, okay, to use the political buzzword, very measured, okay? However, let me say this. Anything that happens almost anywhere, but certainly in politics, we cannot take one incident and say that it's all hunky-dory. We have to put this into a context. And this is the context I want to suggest. Ever since Mr. Trump, Donald Trump, before he was nominated, before he took office, there were calls for impeachment, okay? Before he was sworn in. And before that, we didn't find out until after the fact, there was this whole this whole mess called the Russiagate and the Steele dossier. These people, the State Department, the FBI, these are the people who were behind all this. Peter Strzok and Lois Lane. I don't know her name. Lois Lane, right? And Peter Strzok. These people were the basis, or they formed this whole cabal, if you will, to actually hunt down, I'm using that word, hunt down this man. I think if Donald Trump were assassinated, they probably would be happy with that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
They have been doing this for years. Mm-hmm. They want this man. Now, granted, I don't know what's in the warrant either, but I do know this. As a part of America, our federal government is too big anyway. I will say that if it wasn't Donald Trump. So there's not a law that any of us can't break on any given day.
Mm-hmm.
And have you seen the compilation of the mainstream media responding to the Republicans' reaction to this raid, and how they were ridiculing Republicans who had spoke against this action by the FBI? And it's like every station is saying how it's people who speak against this raid are conspiracy theorists, they're January 6th insurrection supporters, and all kinds of just rebels of some sort. And it's again reminiscent of this totalitarian media conglomerate that is just feeding people information that everything's okay, the government is doing its job, that's what we're supposed to be doing, he's a bad guy, and that's why the FBI had to do this. And don't listen to those those Republicans.
Yeah, it's odd that they're pushing that narrative, because we've seen, they've been going after Trump since he walked down, or he came down that escalator in 2020 or 2019. They've been going after him with the Russia scandal, with the PP tape. I mean, they've been going after him and he comes out on top. So that's why it's kind of odd to see this, and people are upset about it. It feels like a witch hunt.
Yeah, and it really doesn't, like the left's response really doesn't bother me. I think Shelley hit it on this head when she said that Tim Scott was measured. Now, also full disclosure, I've had no problem on any platform saying that I want Tim Scott 2024. Okay. In the absence of Tim Scott 2024, if Donald Trump chooses to run, I want Tim Scott as the VP. I have no problem saying that. All day yesterday, it was like I was swatting flies on Twitter, because they were so critical of Tim Scott. And the criticism is that he didn't say enough in defense of Donald Trump. And my response to that is that Tim Scott actually has a record. Every single thing that Donald Trump did around opportunity zones, criminal justice reform, climate change, funding for HBCUs has Tim Scott's name on it. The infamous Tax and Jobs cut of Tax and Jobs Act or something of 2017. Tim Scott was on that. The people who are upset with Tim Scott are those who tie themselves like an umbilical cord to Donald Trump. They build their personalities around Donald Trump. They financially benefit, at least as far as Twitter likes and shares, by attaching themselves like the rib, like Eve's rib to Adam on to Donald Trump. And I have no problem calling any of them out. I've been on OAN. I've said the same thing. I don't think that it's helpful to anyone, Donald Trump, the Republican Party, the conservative movement, to deify anyone. And that's what the people who were criticizing Tim Scott, saying that he didn't say enough. And my response to all of them, do you understand that the GOP has no role in this? They can't do anything until we actually get the House. They can get on social media and do all of these theatrical, this political theater, which is what a lot of this is. A lot of these people want political theater. They don't want anything substantive. They want political theater, and they're going to hold people's feet to the fire who don't get into this political theater. I don't need it. I want Republicans to take control in November and give Democrats holy hell. That's what I want to happen. And I'm fine with what Tim Scott says, because I understand that if Tim Scott, if he actually jumps into the ring, that he's going to need the nation to support him. And it's not just going to be that wing, that pro Trump is a god wing of the Republican Party, because those people don't win elections, i.e. Donald Trump 2020.
Okay. All right. Well, we will continue to follow this story here because, as you mentioned, Melik, hopefully they come out with something this week to give some type of reasoning behind this raid. Again, Tim Scott mentioned about the Presidential Act. Again, according to the New York Times, that is the law governing the preservation of the White House materials, but it lacks teeth. Because criminal statutes can come into play, especially in the case of classified material. So again, we've talked about many people who have had issues with the classified material, such as Clinton, her national security advisor, Sandy Berger. She received a misdemeanor back in 2015 for stuffing classified documents down her pants. So we've seen these things happen and for lesser people, and you have a former president, who is about to announce, he's been mentioning that he is going to announce whether he was going to run in 2024 in the next coming days or weeks, I should say, and now this. So we will wait and see what comes of it, and definitely continue to talk about it and open the discussion. All right. So join the conversation, as I always say, by leaving a comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. We will check the comments periodically throughout the show. Let me check some of these comments, because we do have some here. So let me see here. I have Denise Glover. She says, FBI has been politicized. Yeah, that's what we've been saying here. She also mentions, after their unethical behavior with the kidnapping hoax, I wouldn't put it past them to plant documents. What kidnapping hoax?
Gretchen Whitmer, I think she's talking about.
Yeah. Oh, yes, in Michigan.
Yeah,
okay.
In Michigan.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. We have Jim Schutz. He says, not so veiled threat to Americans by Biden. If you think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Can I say something to that, KJ?
Sure.
Jim makes a good point. The raid, or people calling the raid, the search, whatever you want to call it, the seizure, at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago, this was bigger than Donald Trump, in as much as Donald Trump's personality is big, right? This was a message, in my humble, not so humble opinion, this was a message to Americans, particularly those who are on the right and who have, credible, reasonable questions against this government or this administration that we have. This was a message to us that you can be overtaken, raided. All of your life basically can be taken out from you at a moment's notice because you are dissenter.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm surprised that more people on the left, someone mentioned Andrew Cuomo came out against it, but when you look at over the past 5 years or so with the Black Lives Matter movement, the anti-police movement, you would think more people would be upset about this. Especially if this is an unauthorized raid. You would think more people on the left would be pushing back. I mean, especially as African Americans, we know, with Hoover's FBI, COINTELPRO. In African American communities, the FBI doesn't have the greatest, or at least I didn't think it had the greatest reputation. So I'm surprised you don't.
No, they wouldn't be upset because if they believe in the ruling party, and I'm not sure about what happened in 2020, and I don't know, who is the legitimate president. To me, the current administration is like a junta. It's a party that took over by force, and now they want to keep that power by force. And whoever supports them, they're not going to speak against their actions because why?
Well, yeah, that's an opinion there. So we have another comment here. Ian Smith, he says, so Black liberals on mainstream media like CNN and MSNBC and other Black liberal news outlets are saying no one is above the law. Well, I hope they say the same thing when the police or FBI is investigating a Black politician or high-profile Black person. I don't want to hear this bullshit narrative saying they are being targeted because they are Black. Okay. That's similar to what I just said. Can I get you want to respond to that, Malik? What do you think about that?
No, and actually, I'll add something to Ian's statement. They won't care as long as the person is not a conservative. So that if it were, well, I'll take that back. If it were a conservative, they would not care at all. If the person is a liberal, they would absolutely care. It's a similar thing that we're seeing now, even with the left, Black liberals included, but definitely the left. They're okay with protesting. They're okay with burning down cities. They're okay with arson. They're okay with looting. They're okay with assaulting police officers. They're okay with all of that. But when it comes to speaking out against people who are protesting outside of Supreme Court justices' homes, people showing up. I think the guy was all the way from California who showed up to Justice Kavanaugh's home with a knife. He actually said that he was there to do harm to Justice Kavanaugh. What they will say is, well, people have a First Amendment right. So it's very hypocritical. I don't expect Democrats, the same way that these same Black liberals will not lift a finger or a thought when Clarence Thomas or things like Uncle Clarence or Uncle Tim is trending on social media, and not just from Black people. You have non-Black people saying that. These are the same people that when Joe Biden says, you ain't Black if you don't support me, they will say nothing. That's why when it comes to me as someone who was a Democrat up until 2016, I know how the game is played. And so most of the people that I know are Democrats. My family, all of them are still Democrats, but I don't play that game trying to be liked in a Michael Steele way by Democrats. I don't need a gig on MSNBC because I disagree with the politics of the left and Pelosi Republicans like Michael Steele and Larry Hogan, by the way.
Yeah, right. Larry Hogan. Definitely Larry Hogan, too. All right. So again, we will continue to check the comments periodically throughout the show. Please share this stream on YouTube, on your social media. Send it in a quick message. We definitely want to get this information out there. All right. So we are moving on to our rapid pop-off round. This is a quick round where I'll give you guys a quick question, a trending topic, and you answer in 30 seconds or less. So I'll start with you, Shelley. Take a look at this clip and please provide your response. This is clip number 2.
Demi Lovato is getting candid. The 29-year-old was recently on the Spout podcast, where the pop star reveals they have adopted the pronouns she, her again, and opened up about why she made that choice.
I've actually adopted the pronouns of she, her again. So for me, I'm such a fluid person that I don't find that I felt like, especially last year, my energy was balanced and my masculine and feminine energy. So that when I was faced with the choice of walking into a bathroom and it said women and men, I didn't feel like there was a bathroom for me because I didn't feel necessarily like a woman. I didn't feel like a man. I just felt like a human. And that's what they, them is about for me. It's just about like feeling human at your core. Recently, I've been feeling more feminine.
The update comes after the Cool for the Summer singer previously came out as non-binary in May 2021, saying at the time that they use they, them pronoun.
All right. So, Shelly, I want to get your response to that. Should we take pronouns seriously, or is this practice absurd?
Well, let me answer like this first. She said she was fluid, and I agree. I think her brain is a bunch of fluid just going through your fingers. It's like a sieve. It just falls through your fingers. I really agree with her there. Secondly, she said she feels like a human. Voila, so do we all. You know, if you don't feel like a human, then that's what we call some kind of psychological disorder, generally speaking. And, you know, there are different classifications of that. So great, she's a part of the human race. What I want her to understand is that the pronouns they and them are plural. So maybe she's schizophrenic as well, or delusional. So my advice for Miss Lavoto would be to take her fluidness and go and have a seat in the psychiatric chair. That's what I would say.
I just gotta have one more comment to that, because she said she didn't feel like a man or woman. She didn't know which bathroom. But what if a man says that? I don't know. I don't know how I feel, and he goes into a female bathroom. Like, it's not about how you feel; it's what's between your legs. Like, come on now.
Okay. All right. Well, moving right along. This is pop off round. 30 seconds.
All right.
No, that's all right. That's all right. So I'll move to you, Yana. Actually, you. So take a look at this clip.
Science has shown, this is a study from the Teachman Heritage Study. All the way on the left is what happens when you marry your first sexual partner. The chances of staying married is 87%. As the amount of men you have sex with before you actually get married starts to go up, that chance of the marriage working out consistently goes down. You can see over there towards the bottom, when you start getting into like 16 plus sexual partners, the chances for marriage working out significantly drops. It goes down to 17%. So we go from 87% down to 17% by having a whole lot of sex. And it just so happens that the more men a woman has sex with, the lower her ability to pair bond, to really bond with one man. You might ask yourself, well, why isn't that not the case for men? There's a really good saying that goes around, what do you call a key that opens many locks? A master key. What do you call a lock that's opened by many keys? A shitty lock.
Okay. All right. So that was a clip from, I think, 21 Productions.
Oh, my God.
So I want to get your response to that. Should men avoid promiscuous women? Why or why not?
I mean, yes, that is, in one word, I would respond yes. However, based on what he said, he's being very hypocritical. And he also is not looking at any other factors that might be involved. Sorry, there's some noise. Okay. I didn't, there's other factors that might be involved. So when he's looking at just the statistics, so a woman who, never had another partner, most likely she also comes from a very traditional religious background that divorce is frowned upon or even not allowed. So this could be one of the reasons why that marriage lasts. And also he says something about the men being the master key. So that's ridiculous. If you want to have standards, then there shouldn't be promiscuity on any side. I mean, sure, there are differences between men and women and how they deal with sex, but there are plenty of cultures that still practice this. And my suggestion, the best way would be for both men and women and not to be promiscuous, but then they would have to marry by the age of 16. So that would be the way to do it.
All right. All right. We're moving right along. I have one for you too, Melik. So I don't have a clip here, but just a quick question. In 30 seconds or less, I want to get your response to this. So when you look in the long term, it appears that the tide is turning across the country for Republicans. In the long term, most people, when you look at the numbers, are moving towards the Republican side as far as elections. But the short term, which we're talking about 2024 and maybe a little longer, can be questionable. We have several candidates on the Republican side that were endorsed by Trump across the country that won in primaries. And my question to you is, do you believe that we are going to see, the Republican Party is going to see the landslide victories in 2024 in Congress and in the Senate and the House and these governorships? We have one here in Maryland. We have Dan Cox, who was endorsed by Trump, running in the general election here in Maryland in November. Do you think these candidates are going to take it all the way and win in these elections?
Yeah, it really depends on where you are. I think it's going to be a little difficult for Dan Cox in Maryland, simply because Maryland historically, there's a reason why Hogan was the first Republican, and I can't remember in how long, who was actually reelected to for a second term. Trump probably is not as popular in Maryland as he is in other parts of the country. So Daniel Cox will have a little higher, a steeper climb. But as far as the Republican, the prospects for Republicans, I do think that things are looking good. We're seeing that not just with Hispanics, but with Asians and Blacks, we're actually gravitating towards the Republican Party. And we're seeing how that plays out in this midterm cycle. Historically, the party out of power always wins during the midterm, the midterms. And so we are poised. I think we only need, on the House side, I think Republicans only need 4 or 5 seats to take back the House. And under every scenario, we're definitely poised to do that. I think that the Senate is going to be a little more difficult because we have people like Herschel Walker running in Georgia. And so I'm not sure about the Senate, but as far as the House is concerned, I don't know. But as far as 2024, it really depends on who runs. If Donald Trump runs and even if he appoints chooses someone like a Ron DeSantis as his VP, I don't think that that's necessarily a winning ticket for the Republican Party, because whoever Donald Trump chooses, assuming that he runs and wins the primary, whoever Donald Trump chooses needs to represent a future for not just the Republican Party, for the nation. And I'm not sure that Ron DeSantis himself, as popular as he might be amongst conservatives and maybe some independents, Ron DeSantis is not a national candidate. So 2024 is up in the air. But as far as this current midterm cycle, Republicans are poised to clean the slate on the House. And it's a little more iffy when it comes to the Senate.
All right. So that's our pop-off round. We do that every week. So I ask a question. None of the hosts know what the question is. And in 30 seconds or less, they pop off on it. So again, if you have a question that you'd like me to ask one of the co-hosts, email me, kj@metroconservativemedia.com, and I will ask the co-host your question during our next pop-off. All right, we have some questions here, some top comments. So let me see here. Ian Smith again. He says, for years, the liberal mainstream media like CNN, MSNBC, The View, Roland Martin, and all these Black liberals, including the White House press secretary and the Democrats, said Trump building a wall was racist and xenophobic, and he was trying to keep Black and brown people out of America. But when the press secretary was asked the other day by a new reporter if the Trump wall was still racist, she could not even answer the question because the Biden administration has now begun construction work on it. All right, he has begun construction work on it. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, this is all political and based off of the party. You know, if Biden is now saying it's a good thing to build the wall, then they're building the wall. They did the same thing about the cages. You know, the border cages were put in by Obama. It was okay. Nobody mentioned it. Soon as Trump was in office, now they have people at the border protesting and saying kids in cages, kids in cages. So it's just all political, in my opinion. So let's see here. We have another one here. Denise Glover. My hope is we all are not solely focused on national elections. While extremely important, we cannot sit idle in our communities. We need to engage in school boards, town hall, and counties and vet everyone ourselves. It's the only way to ensure our morals are being represented. Very good point, Denise. That is a very good point. Everything is local. As I know you guys have heard, local elections matter, I would say probably more than the national elections. So certainly we all need to be participants in the election, in supporting our candidates that we feel should win and represent us. So definitely to get involved. All right. Let me see here. I have one more here I'll go to. Agnes. Hi, Agnes. She says, they never say that about Black corrupts. Heck, Hillary is above the law and many of them looters and burned, but all they think is as they told, no thought. Right? Yeah, that's true. That is exactly true. All right. So we are moving along. Want to change gears a little bit and talk about a pop topic. So we have Beyonce's Renaissance album. So Renaissance is Beyonce's first proper solo album since Lemonade. Renaissance debuted in the top spot on the Billboard 200 albums chart, marking the best-selling week from a female artist this year and second best-selling of the year. So tonight, I want to take a deep dive into her album and discuss the lyrics, marketing, imagery, and musical stylings. So I just want to put this out there, give you guys a quick question and ask, what did you think overall? Do you? I know not everybody's a Beyonce fan, but when you heard this album, did you like it? I'll start with you, Shelly.
Okay, so I'm not a fan. I don't dislike her. I'm just not a fan necessarily. However, I have to say I listened to some of the songs from Renaissance, and I like some of her music over the years, different pop ones and ones to dance off of. I was really overall, I would have to give her an 8 out of 10. Only, and again, most of that is because I'm not a Beyonce fan. Okay, I'm not taking anything from her work or her creativity. A few of the songs, hopefully, we might talk about tonight because I had to cover my ears.
Okay. I want to move to you, Melik. What were your first thoughts? We're going to get into it, but what are your first thoughts on here, on Beyonce's album overall?
Well, with Beyonce, I found that just over the years with many of her albums, I had to listen to it again. And each time I tend to find something different than I didn't necessarily hear the first time. So for me, Beyonce's album, it really represented, it was a culmination of her really history. Keep in mind, Beyonce has been on the scene for 25. I think this is now maybe going into the 25th year that she's been on the scene. There are a lot of things in there in the album, even from her collaboration. So when we're talking about the influence that she has around the Afro beats that are in there, she's working with Jamaican dancehall artists. She even has Grace Jones. People don't realize it. She has Grace Jones on her album. I think this speaks to who she is as an artist. I think it was fun for her. It was an ode to house music. I'm sure, Baltimore house versus Chicago house. I think that she had a lot of elements in there. Typically, she's always criticized. She's never going to be great for everyone, and I'm okay with that. But I actually agree with Shelly. I thought that this was a solid album, and it is a different track almost for Beyonce. But I thought that it was a good album.
All right. What are your first thoughts on the album, Yana? What did you think of it? Just overall, before we get into the nuts and bolts, but what did you think?
Well, I can just speak on the lyrics, and I couldn't even read them because it was just too much of cuss words, and I don't know, it's just nasty. So I can't. I mean, I'm sure she has great beats and it's catchy. But what else is there to it? And I don't know who makes her music either. So.
All right.
Okay, you said the right word.
Huh?
You said the right word for one of them songs. You said, let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. And I think Thick was about the nuts and bolts.
Right. Well, let me say, so when I initially heard the album, because I'm actually a fan. I'm a fan. I don't even know if fan is the right word. I do enjoy Beyonce's music. I've listened to all her albums. I have a whole playlist of nothing but Beyonce for workout, So I do enjoy her music. When I initially heard this album, I did not like it. I thought it was, as kind of Yana said, it was a little more hardcore as far as the lyrics than she has done in the past. I think most of the album, the songs are what do you call it when they have cuss words and things like that. They're not radio ready. But then when we were going to do this today, I went back and listened to it again, and I loved it. I don't know. I loved the album. I had some favorites. I have "I'm That Girl." I enjoyed that. "Cuff It."
Well, so what exactly did you love? I'm just curious. What made you love it?
So I like the musical styling. I like the beats behind the music. At first when I listened to it the first time, I thought it had more of a hip hop feel, but then when I really got into it, she has a mix. I mean, she definitely was pretty hard on the hip hop feel, but she did have a lot of R&B rich music.
So it's the music that is the good part of it. Like, that's what I was saying. I mean, I'm not saying anything against the music that's created, but then the lyrics, I mean, how great would it be if the lyrics matched the music?
Right. So that is one thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Her lyrics were very hard. I'll say that. They were very hard. They were not for children. When I listen, and I'm a reader, so I have to look at not just the music. I have to read some of the lyrics to kind of get a feel of how this is meshing. But I'll tell you, a couple of my favorites were, if I can call them favorites, that I enjoyed was "Plastic Off the Sofa" and "Church Girl." And I think the Pure Honey. Now, Pure Honey was, you better have a Pure Honey, right? I think you need to have, with that and Thick, those two, they should never be played on regular radio. Okay?
Isn't it interesting that you can make amazing music, something that can really draw people in, and then put words on it that are really corrupting you from the inside? I mean, don't you think that that's a strategy? That's something that has been used for thousands of years in the world. And you can do propaganda. You can do, call for genocide. You can put anything on a beautiful beat, and people are going to get gravitated towards it because it's going to move their soul.
That's what music. Yeah, you're right. I think you're right, Yana. Music does do that. Music can do that.
Yeah, and I agree. There were some songs that I just couldn't. I couldn't listen to. Then one of them was "Church Girl." Now, throughout the album, I felt like it was a very strong bent to women, female empowerment. I mean, she had one lyric in there. I think she was talking about pussy paint. I mean, it was very heavy on the, kind of this leftist female empowerment. I don't need a man. Very strong or heavily into women and our own sexual pleasure. But the Church Girl one, I thought was just, I thought that was, I don't even know what the word would be.
I was going to ask you, KJ, why did you not like that? And I was going to say this to you. When I heard that, when I read the lyrics, more so than when I heard it, because I listened first and then I went back and read some of the lyrics. And I said, KJ better not ever say anything to me about me supporting prostitution. When I read those lyrics, you better not. When I read those lyrics, okay, I say she likes Beyonce, Again, some of the musicality I love some of the beats. I thought some of her songs, I thought you could do Zumba to this, or just the musicality of it. And Malik, you pointed out her Grace Jones and some other artists. I swear, I may be wrong, but I can't remember which song. One of the songs, just a little bit of it with her voice reminded me of Minnie Riperton.
Yeah, was it Summer Renaissance? Maybe you're talking about Summer Renaissance. But yeah, you could be talking about that one. But what I'll say, I think that when you're talking about music in general, and especially Black people, we have to think about blues. We have to think about jazz. The things that were said, that these were music that you couldn't have. Even Elvis Presley, there was something to his music that was too sexual. It wasn't Christian enough. And so I think that when we talk about Beyonce, when we talk about women in general, think of the things that were said about Josephine Baker. Josephine Baker was too sexual. I mean, she danced around with a banana suit on, and she had, she was barely clothed, and she ended up getting a lot of her success over in Europe. Think about think about Janet Jackson at the Super Bowl. There's a way that when it comes to women, and particularly Black women, that we don't accept the sexuality in the same way that's accepted for people like Madonna. One of my favorite songs on the album, and KJ, you actually alluded to it when you talked about her female empowerment. And I think I compared the song Alien Superstar, which is like maybe the third track on the album. I compared it to, as a big fan of Octavia Butler as I am, I compared it to that because I thought of it was a bit of sci-fi, it was a bit of Maya Angelou, it was a bit of Bell Hooks femininity. And I just want to the lyrics, because I know that Yana, we were talking about the music, but I want the lyrics. She says in the song, "I'm one of one. I'm number one. I'm the only one. I got pearls beneath my legs, my hips, my lips,
That's
my hands, my
she's
hips."
channeling Maya Angelou in this one,
yeah,
right?
So, I got diamonds beneath my thighs, fire beneath your feet, music when you speak, unique. That's what you are. We dress, walk, paint, make love in a different, unique, specific way that is personally ours. These sort of metaphors continue throughout the entire album, and I get it. The lyrics are a bit racy, and these are not. I mean, Beyonce is now 40 something years old, so she's not making music for teens. This is really adult music in a very Grace Jones sort of way, because there are people who recoil at even Grace Jones and the way that she was very open with her, not just sexuality, but her body. There are things that these type of themes are throughout pretty much all of her albums, but she really goes in on it with this music. But I do, I acknowledge those who feel as if the lyrics themselves are too, racy. But this is Beyonce as a grown woman producing music.
Well, a grown woman, just because someone is a grown woman doesn't mean that she needs to be raunchy. Like I disagree with that statement completely, that just because you're not a teen. So if you're producing music for teens, you have to be a little bit innocent, and then for adults you got to be like 100% completely raunchy. Like, come on, like what kind of people do live in this society?
Okay, let me ask you, are you a Prince fan?
I like some of his stuff, yes.
Yeah, so Prince is a good parallel to Beyonce when we're talking about raunchiness. I mean, listen to Do Me Baby.
Well, right.
International Lover, all those things.
Yeah,
absolutely. But then I don't know, maybe I think even he kind of changed his style when he actually got older. Like, I think his most raunchy music came out when he was a lot younger, and then he had his transformation towards his religion, and he actually did tone it down.
But 2 points I want to make to you, Malik, what you said. One about Grace Jones, and it's interesting you mentioned Grace Jones again, because I didn't understand what pull up to my bumper baby in your long black limousine meant until I was an adult, okay? But when you're young, the tunes are in your head, and then as an adult, and I said, oh, she doesn't mean getting into a car, somebody picking her up into a black limousine. No, that's not what she means.
Yeah, and of course teenagers are listening to it. Just because she's making adult music doesn't mean that only adults are listening.
She was very popular in the black community. But another thing thing about this idea of Black women and their sexuality. We do seem to have this, this back and forth that we just can't really get a hold on it. And I've read a little bit of Camille, I think Paglia, I can never pronounce her last name, but she talks about sexuality, women in general, not just Black women, but through art, through music, and how, from a historical perspective, and that, as a culture, as a society, Americans, we just don't have sort of a, we either here or there, one way or the other. We can't just come to grips with it.
Well,
and people like Madonna can be on stage wearing cones on her breast.
And that's also
she can hump women.
Satanic. No. Madonna is just as satanic as Beyonce.
Well, I wouldn't go even with that. I consider it performance arts. Like, I don't think that anything that Madonna has done is really satanic. I understand that people make those sort of inferences, but it's another. If you study, for instance, like feminist theorists like Simone de Beauvoir, they talk about how women, the sexualization of women, and the fact that women can exist outside of the perspective of what's appropriate for a woman, in a man. So I think that those type of elements, whether it's Madonna, whether it's Grace Jones, which is why I mentioned Josephine Baker, because Josephine Baker was too sexual, and this was in the early 30s or something like that. So think about, go back and look at the things that were said about jazz, which was an extension of blues. Muddy Waters.
Obviously, Josephine Baker was more popular in Marxist Europe, definitely, because that is when Marxism was flourishing and growing and being promoted, and feminism was being fed to women in Europe. So of course she was more popular over there compared to a more conservative, more traditional America.
And so I want to raise something, because what Yana is saying is a good point, because we did have, and it wasn't the mainstream. It was kind of on the fringe, or it wasn't the thing that everyone would listen to when you talk about Josephine Baker. But as we've gotten to today, we see that this kind of sexualization, of women, the more racier things, are much more prevalent in music, in art. And even here you see where she's kind of perverted the idea of, a conservative Christian woman, church girl, and she's kind of saying, don't do that. Go ahead and pretty much sell yourself. She says here, nobody can judge me. I was born free. I'll drop it like a thotty. So she's kind of changing the whole idea of, where of course, the church idea or the Christian idea or faith-based idea of purity, of without all that sexualization,
and of freedom through God. So she's saying that there's freedom, there's other type of freedom. That's what she's talking about. But my question is, what is the purpose of that kind of liberalization? What is it? What does it do to women? How is it helping women?
Right. So I'll go back to the point that I always make when we have conversations like this. Guess what? Again, I'm not a huge Beyonce fan, but guess what? Who's buying it? Because it wouldn't sell if nobody bought it. And guess what? Everybody who buys it is not a non-Christian. They are Christian. They are conservatives. They are liberals who buy it, who go to church on Sundays, who go to the synagogue on whatever day, Saturdays, who go to the temple. So guess what? That's why it's selling.
Because of the beats, because of the music, because you can put anything, all kind of.
They know the lyrics too. They know what the lyrics say.
Satanic stuff on the music. And how about the album cover? I mean, have you seen the horses? That she's on. Did you see? Did you see the symbolism of that?
Yeah, can you talk about that? Yeah, because we want to look at that. We could talk about the symbolism here.
Well, so when I first just noticed a couple of horses, and then I looked it up. I was like, oh, there's actually 4 horses, and that's the 4 horsemen of apocalypse. And so there's right there. So you have the white horse, which is the Antichrist, and I think that's the one that's like the shiny one. And that's on the front, like the main one. So she's, I guess, that's what she represents in that one. Then you have the red horse, which represents war and bloodshed. And then the black horse is famine, and the pale horse is the last one, that's death. So I mean, why is she doing this? What is going through her head? And like, she obviously knows what she's doing. And so is this like a spit in the face of Christians, of people, religious people? Like, this is, I'm now representing all these things, or this is all nonsensical. I don't know. Like, what is going on there?
I think
So
it is.
so are you? And I'll say, because I actually didn't, I've never seen those images until now. I think I saw maybe one of them, but I really didn't see the other images. But the whole concept of the four horsemen. So we know that John of Patmos, I think that's what his name, John of Patmos, wrote Revelations. The four horsemen actually comes out of the book of Revelations in the Bible. And for about I think about 19 or so years, 19 or so centuries, the whole discussion of the four horsemen was about church. It was about the body of Christ. It wasn't until the 1800s where it became associated with things that were a bit more anti-Christ. But for the first 19 centuries, it was actually something that was considered positive. Now, I'm saying all of this to say that we have to keep in mind we're talking about art. And art is very subjective. People view art, they're actual paintings of the four horsemen, and I think that when we limit people to our perceptions of what art may be, it prevents us from actually seeing the art for what it is. Now, we can say, I compare this is a little different. So to WAP, the song, Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. I see Beyonce in a much different light than I see them, because we do know that at the end of the day, whatever Beyonce's art is, the life that she lives is not reflected in that type of sexual energy. We know, as far as her being a parent, we know that, just her being her, that's not her. There's a different person off the stage than it is on stage. But I think we should should acknowledge what art actually is, and that people have different interpretations of that actual art. But the four horsemen themselves, it isn't something that is necessarily anti-Christ. There are theologians who disagree with different interpretations of it. But the reason that John of Patmos was actually kicked out of the island of Patmos, I think it was called the island of Patmos, is because the political views that he shared were in contradiction to the Roman Catholic Church. Not that he was the Antichrist or anything like that, but hence the book of Revelation. So there's some historical context that's kind of get muddled when we're talking about the four horsemen and what it actually represents. But at the end of the day,
we do not know what exactly, why she chose that, obviously. And it is art. And a person has a right to create whatever art that they feel like. But also we have, for example, if there's some really maybe explicit art that's being created, they might actually have a warning on the museum that, maybe you shouldn't bring your kids over there. So, that's like, every piece of art has a purpose and a reason. And my opinion. So I think it's there to influence, it's there to, invoke emotions, or maybe promote some sort of movement. So we can't just look at art as just blah, there's nothing, and we just just accept it as just there's always a purpose.
Right, music, art, any creative type of project, or it's there to invoke something out of the person that's receiving it. And not only that, but we've seen throughout history that art, that symbols, they do represent something. And so a lot of times we may not know, but people know. So I don't know if this is what Beyonce is doing. I do know the lyrics and what she puts out there does affect people, women, girls. Myself, like I mentioned, I have a whole playlist of Beyonce songs, and I used to work out because, a lot of her songs push you, they motivate you, especially as a woman. Run this world, run, girl, who runs the world, girls, body, partition. All of these songs, and I do it because it motivates me in my workout. So when she puts out songs like this, like Church Girl, and other things, it does, it puts a message. I think it does put a message that, you know, you don't have to protect your sexuality or your virginity or whatever. You know, church girls don't have to be church girls. I'm not sure
and you know that and I'm glad we're actually talking about church girl, because it's a good that's actually a good topic. You know, if we, you know, the lyrics of church girl, I'm going to let go of this body, I'm going to love on me, nobody can judge me but me, I was born free. She ain't trying to hurt nobody, she just trying to do the best she can, happy on her own, on with her friends, without a man. Those are the lyrics that she's actually talking about. Now we can say, you know, it's, you know, when she gets to the DJ Jimmy, and I don't think people understand that when she gets to the it must be the cash cause it ain't your face type of thing, that's actually an ode to DJ Jimmy's Where They At, who was the considered the king of New Orleans bounce music. So when she's playing that part of the album on Church Girl, it actually, that she samples DJ Jimmy in Where They At, and it was the early 90s, I think it was 1992. So there's some context to pretty much everything that she has, you know, put on there.
But to Melik, to that point, Melik, I know that's an ode to DJ Jimmy, but it is in that song for a reason, right? Yeah. So we gotta see it there too. But the last thing I do want to say is that from the artistic perspective, I appreciate, like you said, Melik, you know, her role as a mom, a wife. Any of us, I think we do need, I would call it, quote unquote, a healthy outlet to be other than what people see in a healthy way. So I'm for the artistic expression. Again, I'm just not a huge fan of Beyonce in general, but the artistic expression, why not? Because guess what? In reality, we all have some kind of inner, I don't know if you want to call it, inner combustion. I don't know what you want to call it. This kind of yin and yang going on inside of
like inner raunchy.
Inner freak. You can say inner freak, and you know, and I remember from the 90s, we had this same conversation was ongoing about Janet Jackson's.
The keyword is inner.
I forgot what it. No, it wasn't control. It was the.
Anytime, any place.
Oh, yeah. That whole album.
Yeah, the whole
album. People. So the same conversation that we're having now about Beyonce is the same conversation that people had about Janet Jackson. And for all intents and purposes, when you listen to people, they actually cite that album as one of Janet Jackson's best, because she expressed herself in a way that we're not comfortable and accustomed to women expressing themselves sexually. She dove into sexuality in a way that's very uncomfortable, and it was very in your face. So this is a similar discussion that we had about Janet Jackson.
All I have to say is look up A Color, Communism, and Common Sense, the book.
Mm-hmm. And you're saying that this whole idea of women discovering their sexualization and then putting it out there is part of the Marxist plan.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's the playbook. Mm-hmm.
And as someone who actually studied Marxism in college, as someone who studied critical race theory, feminist theory, formalist theory, I've studied all of this in college. So I don't just intuitively reject the idea of theory, because there's a lot to learn. There are things that I learned about women from my feminist theories class that I just never even considered. The whole concept of the other. Think of Melania Trump. Because I understood how Melania Trump is judged by her husband. You don't hear a lot of people talk about that Melania Trump did anything, that she was mean, that she was nasty, that she was any of that. The criticism of Melania Trump is couched in how people feel about her husband. And that is what feminist theory actually teaches you. So I don't reject feminist theory. I think it's a benefit to all of that.
No, there's nothing wrong with looking at a theory, and there's absolutely nothing wrong in studying these theories. Absolutely not. It's the point I'm making is it's not just a theory; it's a movement. So, and the theory has been made into a movement that has affected a lot of people, that has affected entire cultures, histories. People have died because of these theories. So excusing it, and I don't know where Melik has gone. just want to listen to me.
No. I'm sorry. My laptop. I had to get my because my laptop was dying.
Okay.
Sorry. I mean, all I was trying to say, yeah, I mean, I'm studying a theory is absolutely it's important. And then, but you got to see what how theory was put in practice and what is the purpose. That's my point.
And so you're saying then that, you know, it's one thing to have multiple theories, several theories, but we are seeing certain theories at this time really take over and kind of become mainstream.
And I'm not saying that women should be put in shackles and not allowed to, I don't know, have a free thought or express themselves. But come on now, there's a limit to everything, and there's a purpose. You got to look at the whole society, how you affect. We've talked about this in the show a lot. That we need to look at how our actions affect everyone else around us. So you know, there's lots of ways we can express ourselves that is not beneficial to ourselves or others.
But you know, the interesting thing about that is that if you study theory in an academic setting, I don't agree with the study of theory in K through 12 schools or in professional workspaces, but in an academic setting. Theory, discussion, and debate, you actually get into those sort of things. It wasn't until I understood when I was taking the critical race theory class where I was able to understand how the concept of race even came about. Because it was an 1805 decision. I think it was Tucker versus, I can't think of the the plaintiff, but there were Indian women, three generations of Indian women who were trying to prove that they were not descendant of slaves, because during that time, obviously, if you got your essentially race from the mother, but understanding things like critical race theory, it allows you to understand that particular Virginia Supreme Court decision was the basis of how race was constructed in the United States. This is something that theory actually teaches you as part of that Marxist tradition. So we know as part of that actual case where the judge, it is fascinating if you go back and read it, the judge actually determined the race based on a stereotype where he talked about that the broad nose, the woolly hair, these were characteristics of people who were enslaved, who were descendants of Africans. It's a very fascinating thing, but if we discuss it within a structured setting and not in how it's being facilitated nowadays, where they want to put it in our schools and it becomes anti-racist training and all of that is much separate from the academic discussion of theory. I think it's a fascinating thing, and I'm on the other side of many conservatives when talking about this, because I've actually studied it, and it has, if you actually allow yourself to look at these various theories, it is actually a fascinating thing. It's not a guide on how to live your life. It's simply just an academic debate that we can have, which is separate from all of this anti-racist training that's going on in our K through 12 schools.
And one thing I do want to ask, and I asked this to you, Melik, how do you feel about the idea? Because we do see that this Marxist ideology on the left is really taking over. Do you see that in politics, in our social media, in our music, in our cinema? Do you note that, or are you saying
yeah?
That
so the problem with theory, and even the discussion of critical race theory, is that you have facilitators of these training programs. They build training modules, for instance, anti-racist training modules. I don't agree with anything like that. I don't think that I don't agree even with the idea of anti-racist training, because it assumes that somebody is inherently racist. Those people, of course, are white people. I don't agree with that, but I think there's a benefit to discussing critical legal theory. I think there's a benefit to discussing things like critical responsive critical responsive teaching. So if you are in Utah or Iowa or places like that, and you have a large majority Native American population, then you can structure teaching based on just that particular heritage. That is different from critical race theory. I think that there are things that we can benefit from, but when it comes to like Lockheed Martin actually having classes that were designed specifically for white men, to this anti-racist training that was specific to white men, or these assumptions of white culture as, white people are more timely, respect authority, all of those sort of things. I don't think any of those things are helpful, because you are presented with a victim versus victor dynamic. And so I don't think it's helpful in that sense, which is why I said that these sort of discussions should be higher level and taught only in college level classes. There's no reason why any child should be taught that somehow, because they are white, then they need to look at themselves differently, or they may treat someone else differently because they're white. I don't think there's any benefit to that in our academic system, which is why I reject any teaching of such in our K through 12 schools.
Yeah, and in adults in college they have the right to study anything they want. They can read any books that they want, even the ones that we don't necessarily agree with, and that's perfectly fine. And in terms of understanding how different races interact with, or how, the history of different races, that's just a cultural sensitivity. I mean, that's like almost like a common sense thing that, should be probably presented to students, that, you should be culturally sensitive. Every person comes from a different culture, and it doesn't always depend on their skin, because just by looking at somebody, you also cannot assume things about them. So the same thing goes about white people. You can't just look at a white person and assume what they are and whether they're timely or respect authority. Like, that's ridiculous. And
can I just and to do a total 360, everyone should listen to the last song on Beyonce's album Summer Renaissance, where she channels, of all people, Donna Summer in her song I Feel Love. If you listen to the song, that's a direct sample from Donna Summer's I Feel Love. So that's the whole pop. I know I just totally took that back to Beyonce, but listen to that last song.
All right. Well, so we definitely took a turn here. We're talking about Beyonce, but she had all kinds of songs on the album, and we could really do a whole show just dissecting the songs and the influence that these songs potentially can have on people. Because even though the entire album was pretty racy, I'm sure the bulk of the people listening to it are going to be middle school girls, high school girls listening to this song. And so we'll see what they take away from it as well. So we have run out of time. We had one additional topic, but I don't think we will be able to get to it tonight because we are at the end of our time. Want to open it up to you all just to give any last thoughts. I'll start with you, Yana, on this. Any last thoughts for the show tonight?
Oh, well, just thank you, Melik, for coming in. It was really great to have your opinion, and you seem like you know a lot about the topic, so that was great to get really, really in-depth opinions about things.
All right. And what about you, Shelley?
Actually, I enjoy talking about this beyond whether Beyonce can sing, which I'm kind of, still on the fence about that. Yeah, she can sing vocally, but I don't think she can sing. So, but again, I enjoyed the topic, dissected into some of the lyrics and just, again, the overall musicality. I applaud her for her creativity. I applaud her, in a sense, having listened to this album, again, that we were able to even talk about and agree to some degree that there is this battle, if you will, of women accepting their sexuality outside of traditional roles, and not just women, but from a societal perspective, how we are seen and how we're viewed. But yet we do have that inner workings inside of all of us to some degree, that we need a healthy outlet to express the other within us.
Okay. All right. What are your thoughts, Malik? Final thoughts for the night.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was fun. When you're doing a lot of the other stuff on TV, you don't have the opportunity to actually expound on some of these things, because a lot of the stuff that I do on TV, I'm limited to 3 minutes. So it's not easy to unpack things. But I want to say thank you, and the fact that all the three of you represent such diverse points of view. You have Shelley's humor. I mean, you can't. It is such a it's such an inviting space. And so hopefully I come back. And the only other thing that I would say about Beyonce is that she is the same person who just brought us Homecoming. And even if you don't like anything else that Beyonce does, Beyonce Homecoming at Coachella with the band and all of that, you can't even beat that. So thanks again for having me. And I hope the listeners and viewers actually enjoyed it as well.
Yes, indeed. Well, I have that one too. I mean, you making me go down memory lane. I feel I'm thinking like, am I really? Why? I listen to all these. I love every song on the Homecoming album. Every song. Yeah. And it's a difference, totally different than this album. So I don't know. I'm torn. I'm torn because as I get older, when I was younger, I would listen to. I'm a hip hop head. I've said this before, and I'm a club head. I am a reformed party girl. These songs bring back memories, and so I'm thinking. But as I get older, and then I'm actually listening to lyrics, and I'm thinking like, wow, they said that, they said this. This is what she's saying, and I'm thinking about how these songs, this art affects young girls. And so I'm torn because I know young girls, these middle school girls love Beyonce. And so when I hear, some of her album, I wonder, is this why we have what we have going on in our high schools, in our middle schools? Because I don't think we're on a good trajectory for girls, for boys. So, I mean, boys have the hip hop that they listen to, which isn't very good. And then the girls have this. So I don't know. And then I think about, I was a girl in high school and middle school listening to Madonna. And I don't know if it was as bad as it is now. I don't know. But that's a whole nother story.
But now we have adults who grew up on that stuff, and we have children. So we don't even have a balance. We don't even have a grandparent or someone who can, straighten us out a little bit. If you're a young person, that's like there's nobody.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? That's right, because there was a balance. And I'm gonna keep you guys. But I was thinking, I was in the car the other day, and so I was driving, and I'm listening to my music. I think I was listening to gospel, and my son, he's in the car, and he's like, "Can you change the station?" And I was like, "No," And so I was thinking, I used to do the same thing to my mother. In the car, she would listen to 95.9, oldies but goodies. And I said, "Can you change the station?" And so there was a balance. So at home, she would listen to that, and I would listen to it. But when I was out with my friends, or if I was out on my own, I would listen to, hip hop and R&B and things like that. So I think the balance is good. I do. I think the balance is good, but I'm not sure we have that balance these days. Now you have parents listening to the same thing the kids are listening to, and I'm not sure that's good. So that's everything in moderation, everything in balance is good. And I think we kind of talked about that tonight. So we are at the end of the show. Again, thank you for joining us tonight, Malik. Really appreciate you coming on and bringing such a diverse perspective. So thank you so much for coming on. Let me see here. We have our MCM launch party. Yes. So we mentioned this last week. We have a party coming up. This party is to celebrate Metro Conservative Media. So again, this is going to be an awesome night, September 17th from 7 to 11 p.m. on the penthouse at the penthouse rooftop of 1 Light Street in downtown Baltimore. Beautiful views if you've never been there. It's going to be an amazing night. We're having food, cocktails, music, dancing, again, under the stars. Free event. This is a free event. We are asking for donations, but we're going to have a full spread of food catered by True to the Soul Catering. We're going to have music, live performances. It is going to be a night to remember. So if you are in town, please come out. Melik, open invitation for you to come out. I know you're in DC, but definitely if you are in the area, stop by. We're going to have 360 spinner photos booth. Again, as I mentioned, live performances. You can RSVP on Eventbrite. That is MCM launch, I believe, or if you go to eventbrite.com, just do a search for MCM launch. You can RSVP there. It's an adult-only event. See, we try to, we do keep it separate because this will be an adult-only event. So definitely, if you can come out and support us in that way, we love to meet all of our viewers and people that have supported us throughout this year or so and what we're doing. All right. So that is that. We do have the Just the Guys show tonight after this show. They will respond to things that we have said on this show and more. So definitely check them out. Again, we are an independent media. So please continue to subscribe and share this broadcast. You know that I always say each time you do that, it helps to make our voice that much stronger. Check us out on our website at www.metroconservativemedia.com. We look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, count your blessings and live a life of purpose. Good night.
Bye. Bye, Melik.